What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon, and this is your go-to place for all things Lions related. That includes news, updates, analysis, and so much more. In today's video, we are going to be breaking down the Lions' final training camp practice today. Morgan, this actually ended up being a joint practice between the Lions and the Houston Texans, and I was fortunate enough to be able to attend this practice. So shout out to my guy Adam for hooking me up with a ticket to training camp. Really appreciate you coming through in the clutch, and especially for it being the last training camp practice and being a joint practice as well. I thought there was a lot of great things to come out from today's practice. So first and foremost, for you guys watching, this will not be like a super in-depth breakdown of practice. If you do want that additional information and that additional detail, I highly suggest you guys check out Pride of Detroit Direct, which is our paid subscription. I say it's like in just about every video. It's only $50 for the year, but it's an hour and 10 long video that you can get once you have that subscription of like Jeremy and Al breaking down everything that happened series by series. Like they go through 11s, they go through 7-on-7s, they break down what players did what, they give their obviously their impressions and their takeaways from how practice went. So great, like treasure trove of information. But if not, this video will still help you out because, like I said, Morgan and I are at least going to go through some of the high level things that took place at practice today, which, like I said, really competitive practice, Morgan, and one that I was super excited to be in attendance for.
Yeah, and I'm glad you were there. Houston is a really good team. I think people are looking at them a little sideways after what happened last year, but like I always say, context, man. That offensive line was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
It stopped Stroud from doing what he did as a rookie, which was ball out. So it's a really talented team. We were talking about it before. They got a top 10 young quarterback, arguably 2 top 10 edges, a top 3 to 5 corner, depending on who you ask, and Stingley. So they got a lot of talent. So props to Dan Campbell and the organization for scheduling this, like to kind of wrap up camp. I think this is a smart decision and a good way to, like you said, put a cherry on training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just to make a note to the viewers here, we will be mostly talking like offense. And that's simply because, Morgan, like you know this, if you have never been to training camp, the way the Lions training facility is kind of set up, they have 2 separate fields. The side of the field that is closest to like the general public is typically where the offense is, and that's where they were today. So that's where you had the Lions offense against the Texans defense. And then on the further field, which is closer to where like friends and family of the players sit, is where the defense on the Lions defense was going against the Texans offense. So you can, definitely, if you have some binoculars, you can probably see what's going on that side of the field, but I did not come that prepared today. So I really just focused on what was going on in front of me with the offense. And like I said, it was a good day for the Lions offense, Morgan. Overall, I wouldn't say dominant by any stretch. I think, if you're going based off of like how practice went, the last joint practice went between the Lions and the Dolphins, this was much more even between the two teams. Lions offense had some success in certain areas. Texans defense definitely challenged them and made things difficult in a couple other areas as well.
Yeah, and doesn't surprise me. And I'm glad you laid out, because for those who don't know about the practice fields, it really is, you got to pick and choose, man, just the way it's set up. Unless, like Miko said, you come with the binos and you're, ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't surprise me because we talked about it, man. Houston's really talented. I like D'Amico Ryans a lot. I think they're going to be a player in the AFC again this year. I think it's going to be a quick little bounce back for them. But am I surprised that the Lions offense still got theirs? No, because at this point, it's a finely tuned machine, man. I don't care who's calling the plays. Ben Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Moe, doesn't matter. There's just so many players. They've been together a long time at this point. So, yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, who did you think stood out? Like, I know you said what was the order? It went like 7-on-7 in the red zones, and then they went to 11s, right?
Yeah. So they initially started practice out in 7-on-7s in the red zone portion of the field. Lions had a great outing in that phase. I think Jeremy had them going 4 for 6. I clearly missed 2 plays because I thought I only counted 4, but Jeremy had them going 4 for 6. But I think we still saw the same plays. You had a touchdown pass to Jahmyr Gibbs that he was able to kind of take in pretty easily, take that to the outside and then get into the end zone. You had Amon-Ra coming down with a touchdown. Jamison Williams had a fantastic release against Derek Stingley Jr. Ball was placed perfectly, right? And JMO just couldn't quite secure it on the way down. Ball kind of bounced out, it bounced out of his hands, out of bounds after that. And then I think on one of the other possessions, Goff tried to fit it in. It was really tight coverage against Amon-Ra. I'm not sure who was in coverage at the time, but tried to fit it in, just couldn't quite because of like, again, really tight coverage, Saint just couldn't bring it in for the touchdown. But 7-on-7s, I still would say like went the Lions' way for the most part. And then when they went to the second team, like that's where Isaac Taslaw really shined in my eyes. And it's like you didn't see a lot of him working with the ones today, or not like at all, right? Like in terms of like the receivers that were out with the ones, you had Saint, you had JMO, Sam Laporta, and then like Khalif, right? Like that was like your key receivers. They would put like Demo out there, they put Gibbs out there, they would flex those guys out wide in certain situations. So I thought that was really interesting as well. Is like we talk a lot about Tim Patrick possibly being, wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, but like the Lions seem to be very content, or at least Johnny Moe, at least in this joint practice, it seems to be very content with just like keeping who he thinks are like the most explosive guys on the field, whether it was 7-on-7s or on 11s.
Hey, I'm not opposed to that because Khalif, obviously, quite a bit shorter than Tim Patrick, but Khalif is a burner, as y'all probably know if you're watching this channel, can turn a routine pass into a house call quick because he's that kind of sprinter. So I'm not mad at it. You can do a lot with that, both stretching the defense horizontally, vertically, and one thing that you mentioned, I really think, man, I hope Johnny Moe leans into using Jameer in unique ways in the red zone, just because he is such a matchup nightmare. Like I know Eric Schlitt, if he heard this, he'd be happy, but like Texas routes, like get Jameer. They did it last year against the Vikings because it was Van Ginkel who ended up being on him when Jameer's running it. Van Ginkel's a really good football player, don't get me wrong. But if he's trying to guard Jameer Gibbs, it's just barbecue chicken. And it was. So I hope Johnny Moe leans into that, man, that really, because he's such a weapon. I know usually it's like tight ends and big receivers that are matchup nightmares in the red zone. But to me, Jaws in that company, just because of how dynamic he is with the ball in his hands and getting, separating. Go ahead.
And I'm glad you said that because like I got my plays mixed matched, right? Because Jameer did have an outside run that he like clearly like beats everyone to the edge and then got in, but that was an 11s. On 7-on-7s, it was a Texas route, and he cooked the linebacker that was in the middle, and just like it was an easy pitch and catch. But like I think that's the thing that I think is going to be interesting to see how the Lions operate in the red zone, because I think a lot of us think, well, this is where Tim Patrick is most viable. This is where Isaac Taslaw is going to be the most valuable, and the Lions are still finding unique ways of getting guys open. It's a lot of stuff with, again, using their explosive, fast twitch athletes to create separation early, and Goff being, the precision passer that he is, and just having good timing and getting the ball, to the right players at the right time. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to translate, because like I kind of hinted at it a little bit when I was talking about the second unit, like Taslaw is a weapon, Morgan, like in the red zone. And he's someone that like I'm a little like curious to see if he's going to get any type of play like in the regular season in those situations, because big body, strong hands, and like in terms of working through the middle of the field and working across the field, like he gets open so easily. And once the ball's in his hands, like he knows what to do with it after that.
Yeah, I mean, and you check out like that video that we made about the quarterback play with Kyle Allen and Hendon Hooker. He's running some really crisp routes. I was texting a coaching friend today, and he said the same thing. Like he runs some good routes, man. I don't know what Arkansas was doing essentially. So yeah, that's another one you can exploit. And you just got to lean in, especially in the red zone. Like to your point, like you talked about Goff throwing into like tight windows. Everything's tight. You know that, Miko, because in the red zone, it's just all that space is consolidated, man. There's just not a whole lot of real estate. So in my opinion, that's when you got to lean into your most dynamic players. And, the Lions have a bunch of them, thankfully, who can win their share of one-on-ones for different reasons, right? Like short area quickness, Saint is a god, but then Jameer has the short area quickness, and then the the meep speed, like the road runner, to just piece. Like I keep thinking of that run against the Titans where I was like, what? Hold on, what? When he took it 70 to the crib just in the blink. So yeah, I'm happy that Johnny Moe's leaning into that, man, because in my opinion, that's how you be a good red zone team. Yeah, you got to execute, and coaches will tell you that, but don't get too cute and go to your dogs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the Lions definitely did that quite a bit, especially because the run game wasn't quite working in terms of running up the middle. And that definitely is something that I like. Knowing Dan Campbell and knowing the type of offense he wants to run, like they want to be able to find more success in the run game. But to your point about Ja, like that's where having a Jahmyr Gibbs is so valuable, because Ja took a couple runs where, whether it was to the left side or to the right side, like he was able to bounce those out and use that like game breaking speed to really kind of, get some really big chunk yardage. Another thing that I did want to point out that stood out to me in practice was, you talk about how stout like this Texans defense is. This was like a good test for this offensive line. Like Panay and Will Anderson and even Danielle Hunter, like they had some battles, and Panay had some where he looked great, where he looked like Panay. He had a couple though where Will Anderson got the best of him. One particular where he beat Panay pretty cleanly and was able to get to Goff, and it ended up being like, it would have been basically labeled a sack fumble, right? And that's just how cleanly like Panay had gotten beat on that particular route, or on that particular rep in 11. So it's a good test for that group, especially because, like, obviously there's some news out there today. Graham Glasgow left in the final drill. Didn't see what happened, but I mean, he was still kind of like walking around a little bit. He was still kind of, I saw trainers kind of attend to him like briefly, and then I kind of just like, I couldn't tell what they were working on, so I just went back to, focusing on the drill and things of that nature. But I think we'll definitely keep ears out for that in terms of what ends up happening with that. Another thing that was really interesting. Yeah.
So that's good. Okay,
so he didn't need to be helped off. He didn't need to be like carted in or anything crazy
that's good
like
news.
that.
Yeah, good news.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought was interesting with the offensive line, and I had noticed this, and I'm glad that Jeremy and Al talked about it on PODD, because I thought I saw it and I was like, I just needed confirmation. They were like rotating in Jamarco Jones with Taylor Decker a little bit with the ones. I'm assuming that's probably just like some veteran rest, but I did think that was interesting. And I think it gives you a good indication of like how the Lions feel about Jamarco Jones, and possibly like the battle between Jones and Skipper for that tackle 3 position, because the fact that it was Jones and not Skipper is kind of interesting.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on. And I love that you made the point. Like, that's good work for Panay. And if he does have like one chink in his armor still, it's sometimes guys that can hit him with, like speed moves, right? Where like spins, quick dip and rips, like things of that, things like that. So I'm glad he got that work. And then, yeah, Jamarco repping it. I'm sure it's just like they're keeping Decker on a pitch count, if you will, just managing his workload, which I get, especially going against some dogs like Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. That might be just off the top, that's got to be the best defensive end tandem in football. You talk about, that's rare. Like, I know Lions fans talked all offseason, like, let's get Myles Garrett. It's very, very rare to have two like bona fide top 10 defensive ends, and that's what you got in Houston. So yeah, having Jamarco in there. Skipper was healthy, yeah, he practiced.
Yeah, like Skipper would be in for like when they went to like second and third team, or second team specifically. Like he was playing right tackle though, like, and so it's like I said, it's a very interesting like story in regards to like what the Lions may be looking at in terms of tackle depth. I wouldn't say that Skipper's job is in jeopardy in any situation like that, but I think you may see a situation where like you're going to probably see a lot of interior offensive linemen, a lot of linemen probably carried on this 53-man roster, just because it does seem like the Lions like what they're getting out of Jamarco Jones. One other thing to kind of note is, again, quarterback, right? Backup quarterback battle. I thought Hendon Hooker had a really good day. In all seriousness, I think that's who I think that's who we should all expect to probably get the start in the Lions' last preseason game. But in terms of like all the situations that they worked in, he didn't get 7-on-7 work. That was basically Goff, and then Kyle Allen got a little bit of work with the twos. But Hooker did get some work with the third team with in 11s, and moved the ball really well. Made some really good decisions. I think he had maybe 1 or 2 passes where like he had to like kind of throw it away. But even in those situations, I thought he got to that decision fairly quickly. Like, didn't stretch out the plays too long, didn't, put himself in position to where he was going to get sacked or anything like that. Didn't see him tuck and run either, which is like, it's something that we've seen a lot of him doing in the preseason. Kyle Allen actually had a rep where he tucked and ran on a specific, play where he got kind of some pressure and got a nice little scamper. But yeah, for the most part, Hendon Hooker delivered the ball really well. I thought Dominic Lovett had a couple nice grabs from him. So yeah, I think it sets up for a very interesting final preseason game, because like we talked about before, like in the last video where we were kind of breaking down the film of both players, Hendon is probably in a position where he's going to be trying to play himself onto the 53 as a third quarterback at this point. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Lions view that when it's like, man, he's practicing really well, but if it's not translating to the games, like how much of that are they going to hold back from him?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think this might be an instance where Hendon gets the whole game. I bet you, if I had to guess, because that's where we're at conversation wise. So, and we're getting to that time, where they got to find a lot, like they got to make a decision soon. So, to your point, I think they give him the all 4 quarters.
I think it would be a good idea if you feel so confidently, and Dan has pretty much been communicating that, a lot this offseason, that like, hey, they feel really good about where Kyle Allen is. Well, if Kyle Allen has quote unquote cemented his spot as QB2, then yeah, why not give Hendon more opportunities to prove that he should be on the roster at all, right? To prove that like, hey, we need to give one of these spots to him and just carry 3 quarterbacks. And maybe that would give him more time to maybe work through some of the mental, gymnastics that he's been going through when he's on the field, to be able to have a game where he starts. And if he starts out kind of slow, give him opportunities to work himself out of those slumps.
Yep. That's where it's like a prove it to us, like you said. He's had good practices. They've talked about that, but at this point they need to see it when it's live here in the preseason. So it'll be gonna be an interesting Saturday, man. I'm excited for that one, and then on to the regular season. So it's gonna be here quick, folks.
Yeah, no, really can't wait for the regular season to get here. The next time Morgan and I will probably be back here on YouTube, we're going to probably be probably reacting to the final roster cut down, because that obviously once the preseason wraps up, the Lions have to basically get down to that 53-man count. I think by Tuesday is when like the rosters pretty much have to be set. So Morgan and I will at least probably drop a video, either if not Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of reacting to the overall roster, where we think the Lions are strongest, maybe some surprises that we didn't necessarily predict in terms of who made the roster, who possibly got cut. But as far as a final preseason practice goes, I think the Lions are in really good shape. And we talked again overall just about how the offense looked. Like I said, if you guys want that additional detail, I would highly suggest you guys check out Pride of Detroit Direct. Jeremy and Al, way better note takers than I am, like by fair admission. And they break down everything in such a detailed way where if you really want to know like who and where and how they were like kind of standing out, specific on the defense, because I heard the defense did have a really good day. Kirby returned back to practice, and I think it was literally like on his second play in 11's got a pick. So like he's already looking like Kirby again. So if you want that and some additional details, I highly suggest you check out Pride of Detroit Direct. For any additional Lions content or any additional, insight into how practice went, you can always check out Pride of Detroit Direct. Nope. PrideofDetroit.com. Jeremy already has his offensive observations up for the day, so you can check that out over on the website. And I think Al will have his up later this evening as well, so you can get a full read on the defense as well. So definitely check out the website for some additional Lions content. And like always, if you want to stay locked into the video content we have over here on YouTube, all you got to do is hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Those things not only help out the channel, but it makes it that much easier for you to find our content when we publish new videos when we publish new videos or go live over here on YouTube. So with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you guys in the next one.